I think coming into my Aboriginality as a young person is really about, it's not a great story, but it's the day I was in grade 2, and I remember it very clearly because I learned that Captain Cook discovered Australia. I knew I was Aboriginal at that point. I just didn't know what it meant because you're just living, you know, as a young person. So I went home and I said to my dad, Dad, just flippantly, Captain Cook discovered Australia, which is probably one of the worst things, you know, he's probably heard from his child, because his upbringing was to say he wasn't Aboriginal. So I knew later about that, but at that time, I clearly remember him talking about what happened to our people. And then, remember old VHS videos, put one of those in, and it was Our Secret Country. To say I was traumatised very young, yes, I was, but it was a big reality check. Captain Cook didn't discover Australia. When I look back, and I think looking back upon reflection is really, you need to do it to understand the context of being a little girl, being Aboriginal but not understanding that, then watching this video of what brutally happened to our people. I look back, I cared deeply about people at that point in time, and I couldn't understand it, the hurt, the pain, but I saw that in my dad. And when I look back, I think I reacted to that in a way of, how do I make this better? I don't think I was thinking that at the time, but when I look back, I think that's what I took out of it. And that has driven me ever since. That moment, whenever I feel like we're not going to get change, or the fight, I just can't fight, I think about that moment. And I think that gives me I don't even know what it is. It's just this burn in your stomach and your brain and your whole body that says, hang on, I've got to keep fighting, you know. We talk about well-being all the time, and I've done a lot in that space. My well-being is fighting for my mob and getting justice for my mob. Now, I might not get justice, but I try and get goddamn close. And I remember, and that's what drives me. What keeps me grounded is all that stuff that mob just do naturally, and being together, laughing, our humour, our sense of connection, culture, that's what keeps me strong. But that moment back then in grade 2 with my dad keeps me fighting. Oh, big influence, really big influence. We lost Dad at 60. So for the short amount of time that we had him, he was fighting for justice in a lot of ways, you know, with the local council, part of starting up Gunnerwil and Bark Learning Centre, education for mob, very big on education. And just those little fights he always fought that no one knew, and the way he went out and helped mob, even when we didn't have much, but would help others. I think that when I look back and upon reflection, that instilled the rights and wrongs for me. There's lots, actually, and they're not all just women, by the way. And I would say it's taken me, as I get older, to realise the impact that some people had, because I didn't, you know, my nan, for instance, because then you put in perspective when you understand the struggles that they've had to where they got to. So she's known as Auntie Tiny, or Jessie Hunter, the last woman born on Corandurk. Looking at history, William Barak, Annie Barate. Now, I didn't get to know them, but if you look at that history, you just go, wow. And those times of what was going on. I look back, Auntie Winnie, I was very, very young when she passed, but I look at what she's done and the influences that she's had. And then we can go broader. Uncle Mick Gooder, the work he's done. I know I'm going to forget names. I am going to forget names. You know, people like Antoinette Braybrook as well, that I know really well, that have fought. Arnie Muriel Bamblett, under her leadership for 20 years, I learned a lot from her. A lot of, you know who the most impactful, who's made me who I am and a strong leader and has the fight in me? All the clients I worked with. All those community clients that walked alongside, and we may have not got great outcomes, we may have, but God, you learn off those people. And they've made me, because I carry thousands of stories with me in my heart, I think it is, yeah. I would call myself a reluctant leader. I never wanted to really be in leadership. But there was a time, and I'm not sure whether you call this leadership or not, but there was this time where I started doing training, you know, as you do. And what I didn't realise is how different we were. And so I was working at VACA at the time, and we were doing some training on history and families, and they're like, just, you know, you can include your own family and stories about, and I'm like, why do people want to hear about that? There's nothing different. And it wasn't till I started doing that, and I was very reluctant, I didn't want to really do that. But once I fell in the groove, I realised we're not the same, how completely different we are, and how people need to understand that. And working with our most vulnerable particularly, I needed people to understand that. So I started sharing like my own stories, and that was I think that for me was the first bit of leadership that I was reluctantly thrown into. I think there was a few times where public speaking, where someone couldn't make it and I'd thrown in very reluctantly. Now you can't shut me up, but back then, I think I was thrown in to a lot. And then what I realised is the ancestors are telling me something, so just step through that door and own it. Leadership can be lonely, and that's the part I don't like. So the way I like to work is bringing people along with me. So we all learn together and we all walk together, and yeah, it's hard. I don't like saying I'm a leader. I think we're all leaders in our own way, in our own chosen fields, in what we do. It's like, for me, saying you're an expert in something. I don't think anybody's an expert. So I just put my hand up, and if I get chosen, then I'll do that to the best of my ability. I think when you are in positions and have authority, and there's stories that you can't tell because they're not yours to tell, or there's an injustice that you know about and you're unable to do a lot about it because of just the systems that we work in, and you're not giving great outcomes and you have to give bad news, or they're not things you really want to share with people, because there's some things people don't need to know, or they're other people's stories to tell. And so, or you have to make decisions in a position of leadership that aren't always favourable. That's when it becomes lonely. I look at the bigger outcome, because there's always something else that it's for. And I always learn how to deal with it better each time, always learn from the lessons. I think it's just being around mob, right? So as a commissioner, being around mob, everyone wants to talk about truth-telling in Yoorrook. And sometimes I just have to say, no, I just want to be Sue-Ann, Wurundjeri woman, hanging out with mob, and having... So those moments are really special with mob. Not talking about anything, but just being and having a laugh, and whatever that looks like. I've never really thought about it like that, because we're so mob orientated. So if there's an outcome for mob that I've been a part of, like, that's for all of us to celebrate. I'll tell you what I get a kick out of is when I get an opportunity to walk through a door that I probably shouldn't be in, and there's no other Aboriginal person in there, and then I'll go in there very strong, and that makes, you know what, it feels good about doing that, because the next Aboriginal person that walks through that door, they'll understand more and they'll feel more comfortable at that table. that for me is that I love that. I love knowing that the next Aboriginal person that walks through that door, in whatever scenario it is, whether it's my personal life or my professional life, that I've broken something in there that they're able to sit in there comfortably. I think the one thing that I've always done is taken the opportunity, no matter how scary it is, because we have to grow. And things have been presented to me and it's easy to say no, but have a go, because you can always stop if it doesn't fit. But you don't know until you have a go. And I think as Aboriginal people, we'll not because no one else has done it, or we won't do it because it's just too scary. How do we break out of those moulds is by walking through those doors and taking those opportunities that are offered to us. And they're bloody scary, but the end result, the achievement of achieving something, of something you didn't want to do and so scared of, and when you have that final moment where it's finished and you go, oh, shit, I did that, you know, you're so proud of yourself, and it makes it easier for the next person too.